Good evening, and welcome to, I'm Jeannie Simmons, and I'm the chair tonight. Mark was unable to join us for the budget meeting, and I'm just opening the meeting, and I will turn the time over to Rich Anderson.
I'll cover just a few items before we have some presentations by departments. The first is that the budget is available online and in the library. So anybody who's interested is welcome to look at it online. If they don't have internet access, they're welcome to go to the library where there are 2 copies. Second, included with the council's information, I've also included what I call a CIP scorecard that just compares our investment in CIP over the years for our major funds. What you can tell from this is that we are increasing our investment in capital improvements, which is important in my opinion. I've also included for council a budget book guide that just specifies the page numbers within the budget that each presentation should cover. Not that they'll cover all of those page numbers, but those page numbers pertain to that specific department, and they could cover it if you had any questions regarding it. Lastly is how to read, and then we have 2 items, how to read the budget. If you were to flip over to the detailed section, any detailed section, there are 6 different columns. 2020 actual, 2021 year-to-date, 2021 adopted, 2020 estimated, department proposed, and mayor proposed. As I compare them, this is the way that I view the budget. When I compare the mayor proposed, I typically will compare that with the 2021 adopted. That's the most consistent comparison. The department proposed column is good for expense budgeting. You can see what departments may have proposed. However, we do not do a good job of completing this section, making it an entire budget, simply because many of the revenues, many of the internal allocations, we don't do until we get to the mayor's level. So I think the department proposed is useful as you look at expenditure line items, not so useful when you look at either internal allocations or the revenue budgets typically. 2020 actual is the only full year of actual information that's provided. 2021 is year to date, and that's typically through the beginning to mid-April, because we present at the beginning of May and we have to have this ready for council. So just so you're aware how the budget book is kind of comprised and how I like to look at it. Again, when I compare the mayor's budget, I'll compare it to last year's 2021 adopted. That gives you some of the increases and decreases as you're comparing it back and forth. Any questions on that?
No, but just for people that might be watching, the reason it's a 2022 budget is because we are July 1 through June 30.
Through June 30, 20 budget.
Okay.
Thank you. Transfers. There's the 3rd tab is called transfers. We are required to hold specific hearings on transfers. We're also required to have this as a separate portion of our budget. The information that is here, except for the verbiage, the numbers are required by state law. If I were to present this, I would present it differently. I've given you proposed expenditures, transfers, percentages of expenditures, administrative fees, which are, it's similar to fruit salad. This is apples and oranges mixed together, but that's okay. The state has required me to present it this way. Transfers has been a part of Logan City's budget since the dawn of time. I've gone back over 30 years. I could see it then. I don't know if it was prior to that because I can't really find records, but I imagine it always has been a part of Logan City's budget. What you'll find across the state of Utah is cities that have electric utilities utilize transfers from enterprise funds as a way to keep their property taxes low. But for the transfer from our enterprise funds, we would have to raise taxes significantly in the general fund to the tune of $5 million, or we would have to cut services significantly to the tune of $5 million, which is a lot. However, if they are managed appropriately, transfers can be a good way to fund the city of Logan. Maybe not every city. Just for a few pieces of information, we'll review this again when we have the public hearing on June 15th. By council resolution, we've set transfers at 7% of water and sewer revenue, 5.5% of sewer treatment revenue, 8% of electric revenue, and 8% of environmental health revenue. A few reasons why it's a decent way to fund the city of Logan is because property tax has a certain constituency, all the taxable property within the city of Logan. However, we've estimated up to 50% of our property, 60% of our property potentially, is not taxable because of the university, federal, state, city, county buildings, churches, and many other not-for-profit organizations that might be non-taxable. However, these entities do consume resources within the city's boundaries. They do not pay property taxes, but they do pay utilities. Therefore, as we transfer funds from utilities to the general fund, those entities, as a payment in lieu of tax, do participate in funding the city of Logan. In addition, Logan City funds or performs several services outside of our boundaries, specifically environmental and sewer treatment. And that transfer is a way that we compensate ourselves for taking on the risk as well as the headache of providing those services. Now, we wouldn't want to do it any other way. I wouldn't want to do it any other way. I'm happy with the services we provide, given the reimbursement that we receive. However, it would be probably dereliction of duty for us to perform services outside our boundaries, taking on risk without being compensated. It would be probably irresponsible of us to do so, simply because we wouldn't be compensated and taking on risk of loss for our citizens.
Rich?
Yes.
I've heard through the years various citizens challenge this, and I'm comfortable with the explanation. Has it been challenged nationally by other groups successfully?
No, but it's challenged every other year in the state legislature. And they usually come out and say, I hate this, this is terrible, this is awful. And then they look at it a little closer and say, well, as long as it's regulated carefully, I guess we'll let it pass. And so every 2 or 3 years, we'll have a major bill come out about transfers. And then they back off and realize, you know what, as long as they manage it well, we're okay. From Logan's perspective, as long as our utility rates are fairly reasonable, and all of them are.
Their market rate.
Yeah. Then, for the most part, most of our citizens aren't upset, specifically electric. You know, even the university, if they're buying power at approximately the market rate, they shouldn't be terribly disappointed that we're transferring 8% to the general fund. I mean, Utah Power, whatever their name is, Berkshire Hathaway that owns Rocky Mountain Power, they get a dividend. That's why people hold utility stocks, is for the dividend. It's not for the growth in the stock. It's the dividend, the cash dividend. Same thing for our citizens. That's why we hold the electric fund, the water fund to a certain extent, the environmental health fund, for those dividends and to perform those services and be in control of them. So anyway, transfers are not a terrible way to fund the city of Logan. I wouldn't recommend it for every city because they don't have the same circumstances that we have. But for the city of Logan, as long as we manage it carefully and we keep those transfers reasonable and we keep our rates reasonable, it's not a bad way to fund our city. I've had a lot of conversations with citizens who come into my office saying, transfers are terrible, I can't believe we do it. And they leave the office at the very least saying, I may not agree, but I see why we do it. Please keep doing it. Keep our property taxes low. The one thing I will say is if we were to just get rid of transfers and if we were to keep services the same, we would have to increase property taxes by over 2.5% on the average residential home. So if we were to take away $1, we would charge them 2.5. Most don't want that to happen. And most couldn't find $5 million worth of general fund expenditures to cut either. And still perform the same services that we perform. So that is transfers. Again, we'll hit that a second time with the public hearing. And it's been noticed across the entire city, or it's being noticed as we speak. So we may have a few show up and then we'll talk to them about it and hopefully they'll leave happy or not as angry. Last item I'm going to cover, and then we can turn it over, is the fraud risk assessment. This is a document that we are required to produce. We are required to talk about it in a council meeting, and that's why we're doing it here. The state has put this together They require us to have certain internal controls in place. I've given you all a copy of it. Anybody who's interested, go to the state auditor's office. We've filed our copy with the state. We've received 375 points of 395 for a very low risk level. We can't get any lower according to this schedule.
Even if we all signed the ethical thing?
Even if we could get more points, but we can't get any lower.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that I kind of, as a matter of principle, I refuse to try to even do because it's ridiculous.
You don't think we should be ethical?
I don't. Well, I think we should be ethical. I just don't think writing it on a piece of paper is going to keep
Us
a
ethical?
criminal from doing a crime. I mean, even incarceration doesn't do that. Why would signing a piece of paper? There's no crime.
I thought you were going to say you are all such upstanding, ethical people.
That's it.
I can't imagine that you would ever do anything wrong.
That's
That's what I
it.
was looking for, Rich.
The biggest problem with that one is just maintaining a record of every single employee, otherwise you don't get the points. So to a certain extent, this is about getting points. It's great. I do think that for many cities, it's helpful. For the city of Logan, it was a decent exercise to go through. However, I'm a certified fraud examiner, which means I've received special training on detecting and deterring fraud. And for the city of Logan, this is marginally useful. There's some good that comes from it. However, this is meant for all cities across the whole state, and it's also geared towards some of the smaller ones. So there are also some problematic
And special
things.
districts.
And special districts. And so in totality, it's probably a good thing. However, for us specifically, it's marginally useful. So I wouldn't take the fact that we're 375 out of 395 and we got the very, very lowest score necessarily to mean any kind of guarantee that we would never have fraud or that we're the greatest there ever was. We try really hard to deter fraud, but we have many other ways that we're trying to do it other than the points that we're getting here. In addition, let's just say we drop to the low level rather than very low. I wouldn't be terribly concerned either that we're increasing our fraud risk profile. It's just a score that we are getting. And some cities might be very high or get the high because they just don't care to go after it, to try to assemble all of the policies, procedures, and requirements that are in this thing. But that's okay. We're very, very low. Let's pat ourselves on the back and then let's kind of wait till next year and try to go about our business being as diligent as we can to get rid of any opportunities for fraud that might exist. Any questions?
Thank you, Rich.
Yes. We check some boxes.
We have a wonderful report every year from the audit. They're independent. Is there anything by the state in addition to that? No.
There is a state, they have to issue a report on state compliance, and we do get that as well. Occasionally, a state agency will audit us specifically, usually for the courts or maybe a specific grant. Other than that, those are the audits we normally receive.
Okay, we're going to move on now to the workshop department presentations. And first up is Mike with Community Development.
Rich, you want to get that TV up there?
Absolutely.
Which pages are we looking at, sir?
We are looking at 3 and 4, 39 through 42. Okay, my presentation is pretty brief and generalized, so if you have specific questions about specific funds or items, we can go through those, but you are getting the best first to start this whole process off. The rest of it's just all downhill.
Oh my gosh.
So general fund community development is 130, summary pages are 3 and 4, expenditure detail 39 through 42, and then our rolling stock is on 163. Our total proposed budget is just a little over $2 million, and about a quarter of that is community development block grant, so $538,000. So we have 15 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees. In the admin group, there's 2 full-time, 2 part-time, and our budget's $424,000. Basically, we do all the bureaucratic work in the office. Building safety, 5 people there, their budget's $501,000. Building permits, inspections, development review, code compliance. We try to keep track of what we see through the construction every year. So in 2020, the value of new construction was just under $200 million, 1,000 building permits, 803 new residential units, 132 new single-family units. They do about 2,500 inspections a year and then 500 plus plan reviews.
So the residential units are multifamily, correct?
Yes.
803.
Yes, and then 132
How
detached.
does the
single
value of new construction compare to previous?
In 2020, it's actually down from the year before by 25 million. I'm assuming that this year it'll be up. Got a pretty busy year. But we've had, every year kind of fluctuates because of the size and number of big projects. So, neighborhood improvement, we've got 5 employees there, 5 full-time employees, just a little under $400,000 their budget. These guys get the calls about cars and junk and stuff like that. We also do business licensing, landlord licensing, and Aaron Smith does our public art administration in that program. But we do about 4,000 licenses a year, and then we do about 700 complaints a year. Planning, we've got 2 full-time.
Complaints about you?
Yes, we have lots of complaints about me. 2 full-time.
I meant your department, not you personally.
2 full-time employees in planning, the budget's $213,000. And you see these guys the most, or these people the most. But they do about 75 project reviews per year. So it's design review, code amendments, historic preservation, subdivisions. We do winter parking, grandfathering, neighborhood planning. And then our community development block grant program, obviously we have 1 employee there. And you will see that next week. We'll go through your steering committee recommendations. And I would encourage you to look at this every month. We shoot this out to you. It gives kind of our monthly stats, shows you what's going on, what new businesses are coming up, new projects, things of that nature. And with that, any questions?
It's a very nice monthly report. I really enjoy looking at it. So, I don't know if now's the time or not. I've talked to you about this. I think we need to budget in this next year to do the general plan update.
Yeah, we're working on, it's called an existing conditions report right now. And so that really kind of does the groundwork for it. And then once we give that to you and the planning commission, then we can make a decision on, has there been enough change over the last decade to warrant, something new or something else. So.
Yeah, it's been more than a decade though.
Yeah, it has been, but it's a pretty lengthy process to pull the information together. And actually, we started pulling it with 2018 data. We'll probably go back and start pulling 2020 data from the census. So there's always a lag in data, but it's the best we can get.
So is it appropriate for us to budget additional money for that process during now?
I think next year we should have that conversation as we prepare next year's budget, because we should have this existing conditions report finished this year that you can then make that decision.
But is
It is one of your goals.
It is one of my,
It is
it's been
one
my
of
goal
the
for the
goals,
last 2 years.
Right. Would it be appropriate for us to budget extra money to get the existing conditions report, to have somebody help with it? Because everybody's pretty busy.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go outside, I don't know what it would cost to do it, but we hadn't anticipated going outside of our shop to do it. We anticipated doing it in service. So I hired Tanya Rice way back as an intern to work on it, and then she moved into a full-time position. So now I've been doing it, but it's been slow. But we hadn't anticipated sending that out or outsourcing it.
Is there any benefit to doing that?
Yeah, it'll probably get done quicker. But like I said, I don't know what the cost is. I can put some feelers out and find out what it would cost to do it, and then let you know on that.
Would you mind?
Sure.
Because
Realistically, aren't you just going to tell them, and they're just going to put it in a document?
Yeah, yeah, sort of. I mean, really, it's a lot of.
Sorta. See,
it's-
there was not quite a yeah.
We've done so many of those things. We get a consultant to come in and tell us what we're telling them.
I know, but these guys are really busy. I know that. And I really feel like we're growing at this like mushroom stage. And it's time for us to look at the general plan and make sure, and if we delay and delay and delay, like Mike said, it's been on his to-do list for 10 years. And so I'd
Just
like to
make
get
it
it done.
It was 2 years.
Just two.
Just two?
Quite 10.
So is
We
that
did
something
it
that
10
can
years
be
ago.
done by a remote worker, or do they have to be here in the office to complete something like that? Like you mentioned that you hired an intern initially to do it. Could we bring in an intern or a
Yeah.
low-paid, part-time person to just focus on that for a brief period of time?
We could
A
hire another,
lower.
we could hire another intern to do it. It's a lot of data collection and analysis, really, that's the meat of it. And then once you've got that, you use that to assess our plan policies. The assumptions we made back in '08, using the data we have now, the assumptions we made back then, are they true and accurate? What's the deviation from those assumptions? So we assumed that we would grow at a certain growth rate, right? Well, in reality, we haven't met that target, we've gone a different path. So what the assumptions we made based on that growth rate, are they still true or false? So really, it's just a matter of collecting data and then kind of synthesizing it and laying it out there and then assessing it against our policies. So it's when I hired Tanya to do it, there's a lot of time you take to try to get them up to speed, understand the plan, and then digging through the data. The data is easy to get, it takes time to kind of put it all together. So we'll get it this year.
Well, if there's a way that in this budget process we can help move that along, I would be all in favor of doing that.
Yeah, and we have part-time money available, so we could do it that way as well if we need to hire a part-time staff.
Except you just got done saying it takes a long time to train them.
It does. That's why we prefer not to hire somebody to do it. I don't mean to talk in circles.
No, it's the cost benefit of how much of my time am I
Yeah.
spending training someone when I could just do it myself.
Yeah.
Like if you're tying your toddler's shoe because you got to get out the door,
Right.
like do you teach them how to tie their shoe or do you just do it yourself and moving on? So you want to tie the shoe.
Just want to get it done so that we can answer the bigger questions later in the year about whether or not we need to make a big step about redoing our plan or whether we're okay. That's really the where we should think about spending our money. But we need to get there first, and we're still working on that.
Okay,
Mike, this is in regard to efficiency and so forth. I had a call from a highly respected builder, and he says, my gosh, he says closing out or trying to get he had 4 inspections all basically at the same time, 4 different inspectors coming out. And it seems like one could do the work of 2 or 3, 4. So how does that happen?
Yeah, so our inspectors aren't going to inspect for light and power or public works or their area of expertise. We do our inspections, and usually it'll be one of our inspectors, and we have a newer person who's probably tagging along to be trained, but we're not going to assume any liability or responsibility for anybody else's department. So the fact that we have 4 people there from the city, it is what it is.
I'll have to get the detail on who exactly came out. I know.
But generally, when we assign a project to an inspector, they follow through for the project from start to finish. So they'll be the one that handles it throughout the whole thing. We don't have guys coming in and out.
Okay.
any other questions? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Mark, your turn.
Look at how he dressed up for us. Wow.
He's on parole.
He
Are
always
you
dresses,
asking for more money or something?
he always dresses up every time he comes to city
That is
council.
true.
It looks very
That
suspicious.
usually
I
is
can
Tell you
pretty-
that I'm feeling my COVID weight gain.
Oh, gosh. You got the COVID-20, not the COVID-19?
COVID-20.
Okay,
Sometimes I can tell where you work.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
we got a cool screen right there.
What page are we gonna be on?
106 is the detail.
And I'm gonna put the page numbers for you like Mike did, sorry.
Did you hear that?
I'm not gonna put the page.
106.
Okay. This is Logan Light and Power's total budget for the last 3 years. And that 40 million looks kind of inflated, and it is, but if you'll recall, last year we asked for an extra 3.5 million to upgrade all the meters in the city, which we're in the process of doing now. And we also took $1 million to upgrade the natural gas generator turbines down at SOC. So if you back that out, this is kind of what our budget looks like for the last 3 years. So you can see we have some increase, but it's pretty modest. In fact, I think between 2020 and 2022, it's less than 2%. So I feel like we're doing good. And I think our revenues will easily keep up with that. So that's my total budget, 36 million. Just kind of to touch on some of these bigger projects, the third dam project, the reconstruction of the dam itself, the surge tank and the penstock tunnel are finished, mostly. We're just finishing up punch lists required by the Forest Service and FERC for the dam, but it's mostly complete.
So didn't you have somebody take off on you, so you got somebody in to finish it up?
Yeah, well, I've got the consulting engineering firm, Stantec. They lost the engineer that was the project engineer, and they've kind of disappeared on us.
Yeah.
So we're struggling to finish the project, but there are things that we can do without them.
Okay.
We're looking at hiring another local firm to help us move the project forward. And I have about $3 million in that account still, so I'm going to roll that forward. But when it comes down to removing sediment and rebuilding the powerhouse, that's going to cost some money, and I'll probably have to come to you for a transfer to complete those big projects. And you can see these numbers here. Sediment plan and actually removing the sediment plan, I've had estimated at 5 to 10 million, and preparing the RFP and then the powerhouse actual renovation is about 5 million. And we don't know that yet. We're still preparing the RFPs for those to be done. And then we'll get bids and see what that's going to look like. So at that point in time, that 3 million is going to run out really fast, and we'll be back. But we've known that this was coming for the last couple of 3 or 4 years.
See that face over there, over that?
It'll look rich when I'm farming millions.
So just adding it up. I need more tape.
What makes the difference between the 5 and the 10?
How much sediment we want to take out. That's going to be an expensive process. If we go down 5 feet, maybe 5 million. If we want to take it down to riverbed, we could probably blow through that 10 million. So we have to find kind of a happy medium.
How long has it been since we've removed sediment?
They've done some minor sediment removal, like what they could reach with the big clamshell bucket, but before I was here, and I'm not sure when that was. I've been here about 8 years. So I'm not sure when they did that, but as far as the whole reservoir, it's not been done for 90, 95 years.
Yeah.
So we call it a reservoir. It's a sediment trap, and it's trapped all the sediment it can trap. So it needs to be refurbished so that it can trap more sediment and keep that from going down through our power generation equipment. That's the purpose of that reservoir.
Kind of like Cutler.
What's that?
Kind of like Cutler.
Yeah, kind of like Cutler. So that's...
Although I don't hear you telling me that if you dredge the behind it, it won't make they won't be able to make as much power generation. That's what they say at Cutler. That's why they don't want to
Well,
dredge. Because it will diminish their power.
raising Cutler, aren't they? Increasing their
No, they
elevation
can't.
of the...
I don't think it's going to work, but they can't. Said it would diminish the power generation if they,
I can't understand.
If they dredge?
yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
I know it doesn't make
Most of the things
sense.
at Rocky Mountain Power don't make sense to me, so I
Okay.
won't comment.
Well, that's all right. We don't have to talk about that tonight.
So I'd like to see it cleaned and dredged and so forth, but what is the advantage other than, you said, to have less sediment?
It's a sediment trap. It also is a nice recreation feature, right?
So that's a thing I would like. Yeah.
If you've driven up there, it looks like just a river now, right? It doesn't even look like a reservoir because it's so full of sediment and cattails. And
Yep, people are standing on the cattails and fishing in the river.
so, we need to remove that
They're building, but
so we can trap more sediment. And
Because it's more expensive to replace the equipment that the sediment ruins,
yeah, it is.
so.
Yep. Let's see. This is just kind of a summation of my power purchase budget, which, as you can see, is a majority of my budget, almost $24 million. We've kept this flat overall. I've increased my natural gas fuel budget by $150,000. We expect that we will be running the turbines more this summer. We will have a shortage of hydropower out of the Colorado River Storage Project for obvious reasons. We don't have much hydro coming out of ours. And just looking at what happened last year, we anticipate that maybe even worse this year with very high spot market power prices that will cost us a lot of money. So if we can spin those turbines up as much as we can, we'll be glad we did that $1 million upgrade and that we could generate that power and take that peak down a little bit, save us some money. But so we anticipate using that fuel that we haven't in the last several years.
So where is that in the budget?
It's just it's actually not under power purchase. It is under the turbine. What is the account number for that? It's 145, or is that hydro? I should have brought my paper. Whatever my SOC. Anyways, it's the only fuel line, and it's like $350,000 or something like that, or $250,000. It was 200,000. Now it's 350. And it's under fuel, and it's underneath my SOC budget. And I can't remember the numbers. I apologize.
That's all right.
One of the ways we were able to keep the power purchase budget flat is as you know, we withdrew from the carbon-free power project, which was the nuclear project, and we were spending about $255,000 a year on that. And so that zeroed, so that allowed us to put that money into some of the other accounts, because we're gonna be spending more money on those other power resources, so. That's pretty much all the big stuff I've got. The rest of it's just regular. Oh, I would mention that if you'll recall, I believe it was in November, I came to you and asked for another $500,000 for construction money because we'd had so much. I would anticipate that would happen again. I put it in the budget originally, but Rich said, well, let's wait and see if we get the revenues from all the construction, and then if we do, then we can justify coming to council again and asking for that additional construction money. So that very likely will happen sometime this year as well.
So I had a question about the tree clearance, because I know we're switching that around. Am I?
Yes.
It looks like it hasn't changed. Is that moving
No,
into a different
yeah,
budget?
that
Or
money that we paid our contractor will now go to the environmental department, who will be taking care of that for us.
okay.
So that will still cost me the $260,000.
Okay, so that's a charge back to you from
Yeah.
the arborist.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Mark, in the past week or so, we've had a major cyber attack on the oil line. It could happen other places. Are we vulnerable or are we protected? What's the risk on that?
Anytime you have assets available on the internet, you're vulnerable. We do our best. I know IT department works hard at keeping the firewalls up, but you know, there's always a vulnerability there, but we do our best to.
But if I understand correctly, SOC itself is not connected to the internet. Is that?
I don't think that's correct. I heard someone say that not too long ago. I don't think that's correct because my guys make adjustments. Well,
Because again, when we had the recent breach of a water system in Florida, I mean, we started looking carefully at all of our systems and, you know, water and power. And I was told that SOC was okay because there was no internet access. So if that's different, I'd like to know and sort of understand how that
I need to
works.
verify that. I'm not sure on that.
So is it a closed system that you can access, but people outside of it?
Where they have someone on duty 24/7 sort of at
And the
once.
So I know that,
No, for local.
Oh, here.
I know that the hydro units are on the internet because my guys can make adjustments on their phones and their iPads. So obviously it's on the
Does it
internet.
require a double authentication?
I don't know.
Okay, if it doesn't, we should be
Yeah.
looking at changing some procedures.
I'll find that out and report to you on that, so. But yeah, that's definitely always a concern.
I want to compliment you for having very few, if any, shutdowns, blackouts. I don't know if I've noticed any. Maybe there was a little one.
No, these big windstorms we've been pretty fortunate. We've had some individual services and stuff, but we haven't had any major circuit outages. The only major circuit outage we had was that gentleman that hit one of our transmission power poles on 10th North and shattered the pole, and the transmission line came down and shorted and tripped out a couple of circuits at the substation. That's the only big outage we have.
I think he was my neighbor.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Paul, you're next.
Paul, you look pretty sharp too, so.
Medium sharp.
I will never look as sharp as mine. And I'm okay with that.
You didn't tell Mike you looked sharp, so he left.
Oh, I'm sure that's the only reason Mike left. Sitting is an issue for them.
Okay, I have a
I was just teasing you.
very general overview of the Public Works budget, and the big capital projects is where I kind of focused. First, the Public Works Department, that's the public walks. We're off to a good start.
Well, you know, I'm really a sidewalk fan, so I thought maybe that was intentional. You do try and
There were
emphasize
three of us that
sidewalks.
reviewed this, just so you know.
But you were all tired.
I'm just holding you to more sidewalks this year because of that.
I don't dare go to the next slide. I also want to thank and recognize our division managers from Public Works. Most of them are here tonight. And so any tough questions, I'll be passing on.
Do you want to introduce them all to council?
Sure.
They probably know, there's a couple that are new, well, one that's newer.
Yeah, starting on the left, Mike Miller, facilities. So all of our custodial, janitorial, and facility upgrades, including not all but most city buildings. Mike Beckstead, shops, mechanics, including the service center and the environmental shop. So all of our fleet, he takes care of that, and the rolling stock for each and every department, works with department heads for that each year. I'm not sure, no. Hart Wybrow
He's
is
the
our
newer of
the
the group,
newest.
I mean,
streets
It's been
and
a while.
stormwater.
How come his name's not Mike? I thought isn't it
I'll change. So Hart came about 6 months ago when Jed Alomari retired, and so he does streets and stormwater.
Yeah, Jed snuck out of here during COVID so we couldn't have a party for
He
him.
did. Cameron Draney is water and wastewater. Been there for 3.5 years, almost 4. All of the water and wastewater collection system. Bill Young, Logan City Engineering, you're familiar with him. And Chuck Shaw, who wasn't here this evening, is GIS. So those are our 6 divisions within Public Walks.
How long has Bill been here? Seems forever.
That's the way he
That's a
feels
good
about
thing,
it too.
Bill, that's a good
Yeah.
thing.
18.5 years.
What, 8.5?
18.
18, ooh.
He's been having to write those conditions of approval for a long time.
Absolutely. We rely on those for those a lot. Public Works has 83 full-time employees amongst those 6 divisions within our department. Just a quick update from fiscal year 21, some updates and accomplishments. The 1800 North and 600 West intersection is completely funded, designed, right-of-way acquisition is done. We're waiting for Union Pacific to come to some sort of agreement with us, and then we will put that project. I purposely didn't put 1400 North to avoid the Union Pacific topic, but we're all aware of that one.
So are we on the hook for legal expenses for that fight? Is that come out of the city? Or
We would
is
be
that-
right now, unless later we decide to include that, and if there's some sort of damage settlement, we likely could include it. Right now, yes, we're on the hook for it.
Wow.
But as UDOT gets involved, they'll start being on the hook too, right?
Yeah, and they're kind of doing their own process. We have filed a petition with the, oh my goodness.
Service.
Public Service Commission, and UDOT declined to be a signatory on it, but they support our cause. And we're working through several other municipalities making a decision whether to sign with us or just cheer us from the bleachers.
So is that in your budget or does that come out of legal, those expenses? Just out of curiosity.
I guess that's up to you, and I would encourage legal.
I think Kimber can afford it.
Typically, it comes out of our claims and insurance line items
Okay.
within those departments.
Okay, thanks.
The next item was, we've talked about it, Mike Beckstead in the shops worked on this targeted airshed grant for 12.
We got approved for 12, we're gonna do 9.
So 12 vehicles we were approved for, ended up getting 9 of them done. This is within that fiscal year of 21, so 1.4 million out of the 1.6 were completed, have 2 more to finish. That was replacement of vehicles with newer, lower emission vehicles. We started the Main Street corridor study and transportation master plan. We have ongoing, we've done a lot of sewer lining and grouting. We've been doing a lot of that work in-house, which has helped get more and more done, especially with the grouting. As you supported a couple years ago, the purchasing of a very expensive piece of equipment, we keep it as busy as we can, and it's been going good. I put a Canterbury pressure reducing valve on there because it's kind of a unique one. If you go up on Cliffside the last 3 weeks to month, there when you get up to 1000 East, just past it, we've been tearing up the road a lot. I thought that was unique. We had a contractor that was going to do that last fall. Things fell through with scheduling. They were busy. We pulled the contract, and our crews ended up finishing that entire project this spring, and just now need to button up the road. But that's a good one to have done. We've done carpet, and also
So that helps just improve water pressure for that whole area?
correct. It's the 2 Canterburys, Lane and Drive, and Johnson Cove. That area right there, we see a lot of pressure spikes and leaks, and this will help that. That's what that's for. We've done a lot of carpet work in both police building and city hall, including a new reception area just down the hall here, if you've noticed that. We were a partner in the $20 million grant given to the Cache Water District for the Logan River watershed, and we've had another successful COG grant application on 100 West. That was phase 1 application. Those were some of the accomplishments last year. Going into some of the main capital projects. And some of these you'll notice it often takes us years to develop these projects, so they're on the list again. 10th North, we hope to start construction within this fiscal year. We're just finishing property acquisition and want to bid it this coming winter. Between 50 East and 250 West. There will be some major improvements. That's a big project, right where there's a lot of people and traffic. 1800 North, 600 West, we've kind of talked about that one. But I also wanted to highlight this one will make a lot of people happy. We plan to replace the surface on 600 West from 1800 North to 2500 North this summer.
They were very happy to hear that at the Bridger neighborhood meeting.
I would imagine, and it needs it. We'll be doing that ahead of the 1800 North and irregardless of the 1800 North intersection project.
Yeah, that railroad crossing is pretty
You don't want
deep.
to do both of those at the same time.
Well, we gotta get the
If I
railroad.
knew what
issue
Union Pacific was
figured
gonna
out.
do, yes, I would like to, is the answer.
So do we get any funds from our neighbors to the north who are the ones that are driving on 600 West most of the time when they come off Airport Road?
Just sales tax.
Just sales tax.
Yep.
Hopefully they stop for a burger.
The 100 West, and I put pending because we are hoping for a phase 2 application to COG or possibly just a CMPO funding of phase 2 for this project. Hopefully within the next month to 6 weeks, we'll have an answer on how that'll happen. And I guess if it goes the way we want, we would bid that this winter for next spring construction as well for that project. The Crocker well rehabilitation, that's what our most productive culinary well located on the intersection of Canyon Road and Crockett Avenue. We would like to completely rebuild that well house and the piping associated with it this coming fiscal year. And you'll notice I still have a dollar amount on there. That's because we have a recent estimate on that project. All these others, I took it off because it seems to change faster than I can edit the text, so I haven't put it on. The Bluff water tank, we just I'm not positive we've awarded, but we will be this week to a design firm to start that design on that project. That is a huge project. We currently, in this coming fiscal year, have $20 million budgeted for that project. And
That's a federally mandated project, correct? If I
it would be
remember,
more
or
state. It's a
state
state
mandated.
deficiency that we're making up. And there's a lot that goes with that, not just a tank. We got to get water to the tank and from the tank. And also for the cliffside pressure zone, we're going to be rebuilding the pump house to give that more redundancy and efficiency as well. So that'll be a multi-year that we're working on that. Each year we try to check through our fire flow improvement projects. We have a lot of areas that we need to improve our fire flow, and we have a big one slated for this fiscal year along Canyon Road, one that we've wanted to do for several years, and we actually have that project bid and awarded, but the pipe manufacturer recently sent a letter that said, you can't have any pipe. So we're trying to work through that, just like everybody else is, with the plastic and PVC shortage. Right now, the worst case looks like we may just have to delay it till they can get it, but that's where that one sits.
So that price might change, or
I'm sure it will,
Yeah.
yes. Some sewer projects. We've had, I mentioned the rehabilitation projects below there that have been very good. We've also had a couple, as we do these projects, 1400 North had one, and the Homestead development near 600 West and 200 North. As they're working and connecting to the sewer lines, we're finding they're either in worse condition than we expected, or we take advantage of the opportunity to replace it while they're tearing up the ground or tearing up the road. And this was one that was nice to have done, was the 300 North emergency sewer, but those were more some accomplishments and upcoming. We will be submitting for a FEMA grant in hopes of rebuilding our service center roof and doing some seismic upgrades. That building houses all of our public works, light and power, parks and rec equipment. Along with that is where the shops for the entire city fleet are, and often houses EMS equipment and that as well. We're really hoping that grant comes through this year, so we'll be starting that project in fiscal year 22. As you heard, as the mayor presented her budget, and also within the Public Works budget is a new position. Today I'm calling it the Public Works Program Manager. That's the best title I've come up with. But these are some of the responsibilities that I'm hoping that position can oversee. The biggest one is the capital improvement program. Within Public Works alone, we spend at least $11 million every year on these capital projects, in addition to any other department capital projects we're either helping manage or design or oversee. There's a lot of coordination between divisions and departments, and this would give a full-time position to focusing on that, as opposed to right now we kind of do it by committee or myself as we do that. In addition, I'd like that position to oversee the grants that we receive to help manage those more efficiently. And then a couple other responsibilities that I either right away or eventually would like to see them would be emergency management within Public Works, coordinating between EMS, and a more proactive safety program. We do a lot for safety currently. Unfortunately, a lot of it is reactive or looking at problems as they come, as opposed to trying to avoid them before they come. So that's what that position is.
If you call it public walks, do you think you'll get more people apply?
If we can get more to apply, I'll put whatever I need to up there. That's one thing I was going to mention. Ongoing, one of our biggest concern is retaining and attracting good employees. We've got several posted right now and have had 0 or 1 application for them, whereas we usually have a lot. And it's concerning, but it is to everybody's dealing with that right now. It's not unique to us. But that's my presentation. If you have any specific questions or anything I can go over, I'd love to.
The Bluff storage tank, That's kind of halfway down from Cliffside, halfway up from.
Correct.
What's your access route?
It's not designed currently, but our conceptual, what we do currently see it is from above, from Whale Bluff through that existing park and then down to it.
And Paul tells me the design is spec to be mostly buried, so they're trying to make this as unobtrusive as possible. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot would be buried, then there would be some landscaping and so on. So we realize it's a very visible spot as you're looking up toward the canyon, so.
And it's hard because at this point, it's all conceptual. The design that we plan to award that to currently believes it could be completely buried. Now, that doesn't mean everything. We still have the pump house and some things like that, and that may be a portion of one of the walls, but they're thinking it could be almost completely buried and restored, which would be nice. But as much as we can, yes. But that is the location.
That'll be good. Paint it green. Paint it
It's
green.
hardly ever green there.
Okay, paint it brown.
There's currently a bright orange fence that's been there for 15, 20 years. I thought we'd just painted that. It'd be like we were
Somebody
never there.
to do a mural on it, yeah.
Well, if we have it uncovered, it'll get graffiti on it, so we probably ought to just cover it up as much as possible. Does anybody have any other questions?
So with the sewage treatment plant coming online in October, right? Isn't that supposed to, like for
I believe so.
testing?
That's when they first start commissioning, and they'll be
So-
testing it for several
And
months.
is that existing staff that's gonna be doing that? Do you have to bring in new staff? for
That's
that?
actually under environmental.
That's environmental.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
wrong person, sorry.
That's all right.
But yes, there is a lot of new staff, but Aisa can address that one.
Okay.
I'll just, yeah, we're gonna hire a whole bunch of new people.
You could go to 85 if it's up to me.
I'll be answering however I want.
He's responsible for getting the waste to the plant.
And not the plant
We
itself.
get to them,
That's right, you get it to them.
they make it pretty.
Pretty well.
Pretty usable.
If Mark has his way, it's gonna be a pretty usable building, or a pretty
Compost.
composting
That is true.
place, so.
That's
Well, ignore my question.
Yeah, fair enough.
beautiful.
Okay, anybody else? Hey, Russ, you're up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Russ has an hour and a half.
Well, thank you.
10 minutes.
No, I have 10,
We
I have
can
10
be out
minutes.
early.
Oh, okay.
We can.
No, I'm supposed to do this 5 minutes shorter than Paul did,
Oh, okay.
so, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a,
Guys. Thanks for coming and supporting your boss.
You can stay, this will be very exciting.
Everybody
Or not.
pass out as soon as
Or
they're
not.
done.
in contrast, my division managers are not here tonight, obviously, but they do
They're out
support.
mowing the grass at the moment.
Yeah, they're out weeding right now. Thank you. I don't have a presentation to give you tonight, and so within the time that I have, if there are questions, I'll try to answer them. Just a real quick overview, though. The department is made up in 5 parts. We have the Parks Division, Sports and Recreation Division. I guess I should tell you, too, who the managers are. Ed Stevens is the Park Superintendent. Dan Blakely is the Recreation Superintendent. And then there's the Cemetery Division. The division manager and sexton for the cemetery is Justin Allen. The golf course has 2 parts of management, one for pro shop operations and programming, if you will. That's Jeff John. And then the course maintenance and everything that makes that work. It's a big job. The superintendent is Randy Olden. And then there's the administrative section, which is me, Gloria Chacon, who is our administrative assistant, and Debbie Harvey, who's our program information representative, and our person for our PIO part of what we do. So that's our group. There is 22 full-time personnel. managers and support staff to make that work that are full-time, dispersed amongst the department, with the exception of the golf course. That is an enterprise fund. So when we say 22, that is representative of the general fund. You can refer to the pages in your copy of the proposed budget for our department. Just a couple of things to point out. Our department also involves 3 other funds. First being the recreation fund, that's enumerated by, we refer to it as Fund 211, but that is for the operations of the recreation center and then capital improvements for that. And as you probably know, this is a joint budget, so we work closely with the school district and the high school in terms of how that budget gets developed. We generally meet on a monthly basis to go through a myriad of issues in order to make things work. The second is the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund. How that works is part of the lot sales that are purchased for burials at the cemetery also goes towards future care. The thinking being is that at some point in the future, the cemetery will be at full capacity and not have revenues, or at least the thinking is there wouldn't be that revenue source to do maintenance from that time on. So until we reach that point, this is part of those fees. And then thirdly is the golf course fund, Fund 500, where the operations and the maintenance of the golf course is in that enterprise fund. One other thing I wanted to point out, just as overall, as far as our accomplishments go, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on 2 of the items that are listed here. The first being the completion of the 1700 South Park. Way back in, I think it was 2003, we applied for and received funding from the Lee Ray McAllister Fund to purchase from the Render Connect family the area that is now the park, which is between 1700 South and the Blacksmith Fork River, so the south part of town. North of the river is the soccer complex. And so the purposes for acquiring that parcel was to provide additional access to the soccer complex from another city right-of-way, in this case 1700 South. And that project took a number of years, and we have pursued then, from that point, a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. And then there was some hiccups, not on our end, but on the federal end of that program, and it took longer for that to come to fruition. In 2020, that project was finally completed using that federal grant along with RAPS funds to complete the park. So if you get a chance to, and you're out and about,
It's really nice.
make a visit there. It's another great access into the soccer complex. The other is the replacement of the playground at Angel's Landing. So this is the playground that's next to the batting cages at Willow Park. And what we have found since the time the playground was constructed was a need for replacing the flooring in the playground, which started to lift and peel and chip and so forth. And so we're in the process of removing that and upgrading the playground set and then pouring concrete back in to make more walkable, accessible access to the playground.
Is that your all ADA accessible playground?
It is.
So.
Yeah, it is. And we do have CDBG money that's also being used in terms of the mobility part of the mobility master plan. That park is part of that project. And the hardest thing we have going on right now is finding enough labor. There was a time where we couldn't get concrete, but that has since been solved. Now it's just a matter of getting time, whether it's our own staff or contracting it out to get the work done. As I reported last time, one of the other things that we were pretty excited about was notification from the state Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant matching funds to help us with developing the 600 South Park. 600 South Park is real critical to the Blue Trail program because it's the end side to the water trail that will be initiated, at least in the phasing that we're doing right now, from Rendezvous Park. That's where you would put in, and then you get out at 6 South, which is 6 South and about 1910, 1920 West, about in that area, 1820 West, I should say. Two of our goals I just mentioned briefly here. One is that we're still working on getting a master plan for the cemetery done. We're doing this in-house because we wanted to save the money. Plus, we have a lot of information. It's just taking time for us as staff to be able to compile that because the cemetery does not have a plan to go by. And then finally, we're also updating the comprehensive plan for our department. So this is trails, parks, recreation, the whole gamut, open space and so forth. And right now we have an online survey that's going on. It will go until May 19th. It started on April 19th. And we used it at the last, well, I shouldn't say last because the Bridger neighborhood meeting was last night, right? But we did encourage people to go to it both at the Hillcrest neighborhood meeting, which was last week, and then previous to that, the Woodruff neighborhood meeting. As far as our budget goes, the area of focus, there's two things. One operationally and the other one is capital. One thing that you'll notice in the budget areas where we use a lot of part-time staff, we are proposing, and the mayor has it in her budget right now, to increase those line items where we have part-time staff. What we're finding is that we're having to compete with the market in attracting personnel to do what it is that we do. Everything from lifeguards to laborers in the parks and custodians in our facilities. And so in those areas, parks, sports and recreation, even the rec center, the sports complex, where we have staff budgeted for in those operational areas, we have proposed an increase in the part-time staff budget. And then the other, in terms of capital, what we're looking at doing this year, in fact tonight, I think the county is, I think they're making their decisions on.
They extended it by 2 more
Oh, did
weeks
they?
because they have a couple of council members gone, so they won't make the final decision for 2 more weeks.
Okay. But part of our capital schedule for this proposed budget relies on the success of whether, in this case, there's 3 capital items that we have in our schedule proposed in this budget that are also reflected in what we proposed in our applications to the county for RAPS funding. And those 3 projects are a restroom and parking lot expansion at Trapper Park. We've seen an incredible, of course we saw this I guess last year with COVID, and that's kind of perhaps, I don't know, maybe that is kind of the aberration of the norm. But nonetheless, we've seen an incredible increase in usership of of Trapper Park. And so we need to address having a permanent restroom facility and improving the parking lot that's there. The second item is.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So the dirt road that leads to the park, is that the city's responsibility too, or is that somebody else's? Because
Yeah.
it's,
It's a good question. The road from 1800 south up to the park, that is 1600 west. That's a county
it's a
road.
county road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once that crosses the canal, it's into the park. And so our intent is to pave the access road from the canal
Canal to the park, to the
and the
playground.
parking lot as well. And then we're going to expand the parking lot and pave that as well. Yeah, that's a project that we'll need to work with the county on over time because, one, it needs to be improved. Two, it needs to be widened. But usually when those kinds of improvements come along, it's partly because of development occurring, right?
Yeah.
So, and who knows, the timing might be right where those kinds of things come together. But for now, it's the park premise itself that we want to improve.
Yeah, that is, I mean, that's a pretty narrow road if you're coming in and someone's coming out. If
Yeah.
they're a careless driver with screaming children or dogs in the car, I
Yeah,
had to slam my brakes on.
sure. You know,
Hello,
Yeah.
coming at you.
you move to the side and hope you're not, in the ditch.
In the ditch, yeah.
Yes. The other two is the court lights at Bridger Park for the pickleball courts.
We're
And
excited about that.
yeah, no
We're happy
kidding.
about that.
Yes, and timing's everything too. We usually find out by the time we have it in budget, it's summer. But I think in this case, we could probably work through some small inconvenience, but it would probably be around the end of fall before we have it in place.
So when that park was built, was there anticipation that it would have lights someday, or do we need to dig up stuff to put the?
No, there's conduit already when it was constructed. We just have to find the conduit.
Sounds like speaker wire in your house, right?
Yeah,
I
right.
know it's in this wall somewhere.
You think you're smart enough to put it in, and then you just have to find it afterwards.
I asked you, don't they map that?
Yeah, we can get it with metal detectors. It's not hard to find. And then the last is the Deer Pen Park development, which, the UORG grant that we received announcement on is certainly a big boost to help us move that along. I'll just make mention too, because Carla Blanche, who's the county trails coordinator, mentioned to me that we had gone in on a partnered application to extend the Logan Middle Canal Trail that would, in this case, go from 1400 north through the USU cross-country facility, still follow the canal, and then exit somewhere out where we would need to be, it would be Carly, would be coordinating with North Logan to continue it. I'm not sure to what street they were looking at. But it looks promising in terms of RAP's assistance with that project. So there's things in the works. There's lots to do. Just at this point in time, I wish we had the labor to get to things. With that, I will take questions.
So I have a question, I don't know if this is for you or for Rich, but in the Perpetual Care Fund, we used to have charges for, and now we don't, for services in that fund.
What page are you looking at?
I'm looking at page 9.
So the Perpetual Care Fund, we don't budget for because we're not gonna spend anything out of there. So all we're really doing, and all this is showing, is the collection of those revenues. And so we do get those each year. They're just in the actual, so there's nothing in budget because we don't budget to spend them. We could, in theory, put a budget over here and then just say, it's just gonna go to fund balance, but we don't do that.
Okay.
So the only thing we do budget for is the transfer that comes from the general fund. And it is, that transfer of 80,000 is to catch us up to where we need to be. In addition, what Russ talked about, the portion of the plots. A portion goes to revenue, a portion goes to perpetual care. This is the 43,000 that you see that comes in each year. That's the amount that comes from a plot.
Right, and we raised those fees this year, so did we see the hoped for increase that we wanted with the increase in charges?
Probably so. I mean, we have, we talk with other operators on a pretty regular basis. There are some in the state, mostly along the Wasatch Front, where they're running out of room. And so they're changing policy to be more restrictive, resident only, other kinds of circumstances. We're not quite there yet, thank goodness. But, although people look for other options, and it's one of the reasons why we're doing the master plan, because we need to cite where columbariums could go at the cemetery, because people are asking for that now. They're already doing burials with cremains, but we don't have this other convenience for them to choose from, which other cemeteries are doing. But nonetheless, the property is being sold. At the Hillcrest meeting, the question was asked, how much time do we have left? And there's really two factors that, one of which is impossible to project, and that is a person that has property or has title to a plot. We've seen the practice, and it's been going on for a while, where they'll take it and transfer that to another family member. And in some cases, that family member is younger than the person that's holding it. So the notion being is that when that happens, the idea is that that younger person is going to live longer than the person who transferred it to them. And so you have to kind of figure out how many more years on that plot will you have, times the number of plots that people have title to but are not occupied. And so that factor could be as much as 100 years. So, when we talk about running out of room, the only sure thing that we have is the number of lots that we sell every year and how many lots get occupied. When we factor those together, it still puts us at somewhere between 35 and 40 years.
But Russ, when you buy a lot, you buy a piece of ground, so you only have so many pieces of ground that are available in the long run. So how many pieces of ground do we have left that are not taken?
Yeah, we have that number. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's given to me as a monthly report that
To me, that's the how much room we have left number.
Certainly, from a sales standpoint, a sale of lot, or in this case plot, yes, we can somewhat project that based on what our average has been from previous years.
But it doesn't matter how many people we bury, it matters how many lots we have left.
But a lot of the
That's
people
right.
that we bury already own a lot. People
I
buy
know.
them in advance.
Oh,
So,
I know.
I mean,
but-
if you look at all the people that die and want to be buried in the cemetery, a good portion of them already have their
Right.
property.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if you have 422 lots and you sell 425 of them, you've oversold what you have available, and it doesn't really matter when they die, because they're gone.
No,
I mean,
the
you can't
one
sell
factor to that is that as people sell them or buy them from the city, then is sometimes, not in all cases, a transfer of ownership. We have, in few instances, where lots have been purchased and the owners cannot be located. And this is over 50 or 60 years. Now, we've consulted with the legal department because we want to know, what happens then. The city can recover lots, but I think it's a 75-year amount of time before action can start the process of reacquiring lot. So, I mean, there's a couple of different variables, but I understand.
So
what you're
based
saying.
on your monthly report, I know you don't know the number exactly, but what percentage of acreage is left unsold?
Unsold.
Yeah, unsold, there's probably about 35% roughly
Of the entire acreage
of
of
the
the
entire
cemetery?
53 acres.
Okay. And that represents, I don't know how many lots.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Huh?
It's a lot.
It's a
A
lot?
lot. Oh, that was
A
clever.
lot of plots.
Well, I just get, it's hard to determine when the cemetery is technically full, it's when every lot is sold. It's not full when we buried everybody.
true.
We should go deeper.
Yeah, we can just layer them, right?
We just make smaller and smaller lots.
Do it in Europe.
So just a comment, there are quite a few residents up in that area that have used the cemetery as an off-leash dog park. I don't know if you're aware of that.
We are.
In the evening.
Yeah.
So we might want to put some signage up at the cemetery about dogs on leash.
Yeah,
Well,
I-
actually, no dogs are allowed in the cemetery,
yeah, they are not.
technically.
Yeah, they're not.
Leashed or not.
Since I walk through there frequently now, I've noticed that frisbees and things are happening in the unsold portion,
What's wrong with people?
It's an area where there are no active graves, but I just didn't know if you guys were aware, because,
They are aware of it.
Okay.
I know that they were at one time, because it's been a while, that they were processing for the installation of signs. And I don't know where they are with that, but they are aware of it. Yeah, I had to once break up a spaghetti party that was going on in Babyland. And you want to be respectful, and because you don't know what we're walking up on.
And different customs and traditions
Right,
exist for
right.
people.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I think the staff try to be, sensitive to these matters, but, we still have a place that we need to take care of.
Question. With regard to the golf course, when coronavirus came on, of course, none of us really expected anything, didn't know what to expect. You said that we're making quite a bit more revenue on it because we're doing less tournaments. So now that the coronavirus has ebbed, we're going to do more tournaments? Are we going to make less money? Are we going to change our structure?
Yeah, one thing is that part of tournaments come with the excitement from organizers, and not talking about ourselves, but from those who organize things like tournaments, of wanting to get back into the swing of things, right? I mean, we're seeing that with the number of reservations for special events and special event permits. Golf courses are no different. So we anticipate that there will be more requests made to the pro shop for organizing tournaments, some of which we do because of the men's and women's associations that we have. There is always this balance that the staff need to hit, because they know that there are these numbers that pertain to performance in the budget that need to be met, especially since the bar was really raised last year, partly because of COVID. And so there's this expectation that, that's the new bar we want you to shoot for. And I think that's a worthy thing to do. It takes a combination of both, and we have to be really careful about how we manage new play, because that's just as important as those who have been there for a long time. And that, I think, that's where the science is with making this work. And Jeff and I talk about this all the time. You got to find a balance to be able to do this. We made some adjustments last year with when our maintenance gets done on the driving range. Monday nights or Mondays is probably not a good time to do that. And so Randy made some adjustments around that so that we can not impact revenue as it pertains to the driving range. But you got to get it done, so.
You probably picked up a lot of new patrons because people found the course. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They discovered golf.
Yeah, they did. In fact, one of the lines in here is a miscellaneous revenue line item in the golf course fund. Most of that this past year was made up of the rental of golf clubs. You know, in the past, it's probably not been one we've worried about too much, but that is an indicator. Other than, and with COVID, we don't think that it was because people left their clubs at home and they just wanted to, you know, use whatever you had. Most people have their own set, but we do think it had more of a relationship with those who were out for the first time, and having rental sets available for people to rent to play seemed to be on the mark.
Good.
Any other questions? Thanks, Russ. You've got a lot on your plate.
Can't wait for winter.
Okay, we have number 4 is general questions and answers. Are there any, or have we had them all?
We'll have several other opportunities as well.
Then we are adjourned.
Good deal.
You did it. Hey, you did a good job on the meeting.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. First budget workshop.